Our reading for this morning is found in Psalm 99. The Lord is king, let the people tremble. He sits enthroned upon the cherubim, let the earth quake. The Lord is great in Zion, he's exalted over all the peoples. Let them praise your great and awesome name. Holy is he. Mighty King, lover of justice, you've established equity. You've executed justice and righteousness in Jacob. Extol the Lord our God. Worship at his footstool. Holy is he. Moses and Aaron were among his priests. Samuel also was among those who called his name. They cried to the Lord, and he answered them. He spoke to them on the pillar of a cloud. They kept his decrees and statutes that he gave them. O Lord our God, you answered them. You are forgiving God to them, but an avenger of their wrongdoings. Extol the Lord our God and worship at his holy mountain, for the Lord our God is holy.
Well, Chris, that was a great discipleship moment. I think I could just go home now. I have to take out the first 3 pages of my sermon because Chris has already said it. It's good that we're thinking alike, Chris. It is. This psalm really does begin to hit at the heart of what we've been trying to do all summer as we try, and all this year, as we try to balance joy and justice. And we talk a lot about catching the joy because that can be kind of fun. But what about this justice thing? And this psalm, I think, really sets it into a setting. I mean, it sets the stage of what it all means. Now, the translation that Chris used begins, the Lord reigns, or the King God reigns. In the one that we read is a different translation. It says that the Lord is king. That's one of the things that happens when you read more than one translation, because they both sort of say the same things. Some people in a time called God the King. That's just another name, like we have Jehovah and we have other names for God, but it's the same God, right? And so the psalm here is called an enthronement psalm. It's one of several psalms that gets us to look at God in a way that God is on the throne. God is the one that reigns. God is the one that fills the heavens and the earth. God is the one. That's why they use terms like exalt and extol. They want you to get this sense of the wonder and the awesomeness of God, that God is more than what we can actually comprehend. Oh, we try our best. We write what we think about God. We make pictures of God. We try to make God understandable to us. But this song, along with others, says God is more than all of that. This sovereign God, lifted up high and holy. That's how this psalm begins and ends, and it's even in the middle. God is more than what we can even comprehend. But there's a couple phrases in this psalm that I think sometimes we miss. Because we're so wrapped up in the majesty of God, which we need to be, that we don't hear these terms. And the first one is in verse 2, where it says, the Lord is great in Zion. He is exalted over all the peoples. I'm going to stop right there. And another translation, it says, all the nations. Hear that. God is exalted by all the peoples, all the nations. Now you got to stretch your mind out. God is not just worshiped the way we worship. God is not just worshiped in the land that we live in. God is not just worshiped in the language that we know. God is the God of all the people, all the nations. Can you stretch your mind to see what that might be like? That all the peoples of the earth? Well, what would that mean? Well, it might mean what happened at creation when God created all the world and he said to humanity, called Adam and Eve, he says, now I've created it all. It is yours to take care of, the whole world. Oh my, I can hardly weed my garden every week. It might be like the blessing that Abraham got. Abraham was promised to be a part of a wide bunch of nations, and God made this promise. I'm going to bless you so that you can be a blessing to all. It might even be what we learn about when God sent Jesus Christ into the world. Do you remember that verse? For God so loved the world that he gave his son. Now, you know what we do as humans? We try to make God fit into our world. You know, we sort of say, well, God, we sort of do it this way, so it must be the right way. Well, this is how I understand God, so God, this must be the right answer. You know, this is what I'm comfortable with and what I like, and so this must be the right way. And friends, read this verse again. God is sovereign, reigns, is omnipotent, wonderful, awesome for all peoples, all nations. Now, Jesus ran into this problem when he was walking the earth. You see, Jesus went to the temple regularly. He knew the scriptures. He worshiped. He knew all of that. But he got himself into trouble with those religious folks. You know, he had the audacity to heal somebody on the Sabbath. That's against the rules. God doesn't do it that way. He let his disciples eat the grain out in the field because they were hungry, and it was on the Sabbath. Shame on him. Doesn't he know how to do church? Doesn't he know how it's supposed to be this way? Jesus even ate with sinners. And you know what? He invited people like tax collectors to be disciples and women to be disciples. Oh, he's just messing up what we think the church should be. And you know, because they had made God fit into their box, they missed Emmanuel, God with us, walking right alongside of them. Friends, we need to not miss this verse, that God is the God of all nations and all people. Because the other verse that sometimes we skip over because we're reading how holy God is and how awesome God is and how we want to worship this God is the verse that says, and the king is the lover of justice, and he established justice with equity. We need to look at those two terms a little bit. We talk a lot about justice, but what do we mean about justice? Well, as I did my research this week, it seems like some people think that justice is about something like revenge or retaliation. You know, you did something to me, I'm going to get you back. You know, you hurt me, and so now I have the justice that I can hurt you back. It's something about retaliation because I deserve this. Jesus talked about that in the Gospel of Matthew. Do you remember when he said something like, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, if somebody slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek." You've heard it said to love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you to love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. You see, justice in the eyes of God is not about retaliation. It's not about getting even. It's not about you hit me and I'm going to hit you back. That is not the justice that God establishes through equity. The other thing that sometimes people have used justice for is to keeping the law. You know, we are a just nation. We have laws to keep, and we have people that need to be in their place. And if they break the laws, then we are just to put them away, to lock them up. We are just to make them pay. It's justice. Well, that's not how Jesus lived. Do you remember the story of the time when Jesus was walking along and he came upon a crowd, and one side was this woman, and she had been caught in adultery. She was a sinner. There's no one that's saying that did not happen. She did something wrong. And on this side was the group of people. They said, "We know what to do and what the law says. We're going to stone her to death. We got our rocks. We're ready to go." And Jesus got in the middle. And he wrote something in the sand. We don't know what he wrote in the sand. But when he wrote it in the sand, he looked up and says, "Okay, you stone throwers, you who have no sin, toss the first stone." And he waited. And they went away. And then he turned to the woman and said, "Where'd they go?" And she said, "No, they just wandered away." And he says, "Well, why don't I give you a second chance? Why don't you experience forgiveness? Why don't you let me bring you encouragement and support and go and sin no more?" You see, that type of justice restores someone's life. When we talk about justice in the eyes of God, we're not talking about getting paybacks. We're not talking about stoning people and harming people for the wrongs we're done. We're talking about restorative justice, where we come alongside, become a bridge for, become a barrier to, that people might have second chances. Oh, yes, they need to be held accountable. Don't read that into what I'm saying. People will be held accountable. But they also need second chances to rebuild their lives. That's justice with equity. What's equity? Well, equity is not about us all having everything the same. It's not that we all started at the same place, that we all have the same intelligence, that we all have the same humor, that we all, we like to think that's equality. And we have sometimes set things up that we will say everybody is equal and has equal opportunities. But that's just not true. Equity says that we all come with our individual lives. We all come with individual needs. We all come and start life at different places. And some people need to have someone step in and help them open doors, to give them second chances, to provide opportunities for them to live in the fullness of the life that God gave them. Justice with equity is about helping people find the fullness of their life. And that will look different for different people. I think that's the example we have in another Bible story. It kept coming to my mind, so I have to share it with you. Even if you don't think it fits, I think it fits. It's the story of the day that Jesus was walking along, and he was thirsty, so he sat at a well, and it was in the wrong place. It was in Samaria, but, he sat there anyway. And his disciple says, Jesus, what are you doing? We're hungry. We're going to go on to town and get something to eat. We'll bring you something back. Do you want to come? No, I'm going to rest here. Maybe he saw the woman who was beginning to make her way. And that woman came, and, Jesus had the choice. He could sort of crouch down and so she didn't see him. He didn't have to address her. She was a woman. She was a Samaritan. He could have just pretended like he was invisible, that he won't see them. She might not see me. But he didn't do that. Jesus saw her. Jesus took time to talk to her. And as they talked, Jesus talked about living water. And she got more interested. And all of a sudden, by the end of the story, her life took on new meaning. She found some new ways to live, to find fullness in life. She discovered the joy of life and living. And she became the first evangelist. She went back to the village and she said, there's this guy out there you got to come meet. And several people that day found new life. Jesus saw her. When we do justice with equity, we need to see people. Jesus saw Zacchaeus up in a tree. Nobody else noticed him. Jesus felt the woman who touched his cloak. No one else had even noticed her. When we do justice with equity, we need to see people. And then we need to have conversations with people in ways that they can relate. He talked to the farmers about seeds and soil. He talked about those who fished about nets and boats. He talked to the Pharisees about the scriptures. He talked to people on their level, in their life experience. And he brought them hope. He brought them and lifted them up that they might experience the fullness of life. That's justice with equity. And that's why those of us who follow Jesus, sometimes we lose our way because we want people to come to us instead of us seeing them where they're at. Sometimes we want people to worship like us, be like us, think like us, and call God all the same names instead of different names, and if you worship differently, well, that's just wrong. Sometimes we don't remember that Jesus said, come, follow me. Be the light that will help people see the awesomeness of God. Be the salt of the earth that brings some flavor and joy and energy so people can experience the living God. Be the yeast in the bread so that when you walk, something will grow out of you, which points the way to this awesome God, the God of all nations and all people, and be a part of bringing justice with equity so all people can experience relationship to the living God. I don't know about you, but I bet this week I'll meet somebody and I'll have the choice whether I want to see them or walk right on by. This week, I'll have the opportunity for someone who talks about God differently or worships differently to be with them and see God in a new and different way. This week, God is calling, Jesus is inviting. Come, follow me. What would that mean for you? Let us pray. Gracious God, thank you for being the God of all people. Help us to see them, to reach out to them, to bring them in a way to experience your wonderful love and grace, life. Gracious God, we want to follow you. Speak to us the word that we need to hear.